My name is Will McIntosh. I'm Global Head of Research for USAA Real Estate. And I'd like to talk today about migration trends, particularly domestic migration trends. It's been a hot topic for the last few years as people have been concerned about how people seem to be moving from the cities along the coast to other cities. And I know a lot of investors in particular have been worried about what this means for investing in some of those cities if everybody seems to be moving out. Our research team took a look at this question and said, maybe it's not as bad as it seems. We went out and gathered some data from the United States Postal Service using the Freedom of Information Act, and we got change of addresses for over 32 million changes, and we looked at those to see where people were leaving from and where they were going. And it was kind of interesting in that a lot of people were concerned that there was this major movement between markets, and what we found is that wasn't the case. Actually, it was the movement was pretty stable. There was basically a net migration pattern that showed stability and not this mass exodus. But what was clear is there were a few cities that we could worry about, and one was New York, and one was in particular the Bay Area, San Francisco. We decided that not only did we want to look at the movements between markets, but we were curious about what was going on inside the markets, the intra-market movements, if you will, because there was a big concern that there was this mass exodus, particularly during the pandemic, from the CBD urban areas out to the suburbs. And investors were worried about what that would mean for them and what they should be doing going forward. And so we grouped all of these change of addresses down to the zip code level and grouped them into density deciles that allowed us to look at movement from the high density areas to the lesser density areas. And we found that, yes, there was a major trend there, that there was a lot of movement, particularly during the pandemic, from high density areas and virtually all the major cities in the country out to what I call suburban nodes or urban nodes and closer in suburban areas. And, it sort of led us to wonder, well, what's driving that? Well, there are a couple things that came to mind that we felt were probably major factors. One was that we know that there had been a trend going on with the millennials. The millennials were aging. The millennials today, actually, I think the oldest millennial is about 41 years of age, and over 50% of the millennials are over 32. So they're finally getting married. They're starting families. Their spending patterns are picking up significantly. And many of them were looking to move their family outside of urban areas to where they could perhaps live a little more comfortably and have more space. And so that trend had been going on prior to the pandemic, and we believe that the pandemic accelerated it significantly. So that was a major trend that we think in part was driving this. Another trend is the whole work from home idea. When the pandemic hit, a lot of people, many offices closed, a lot of the support amenities in the downtown urban areas closed, so people moved out. And I think the question becomes now is, as things normalize, will they transition back into the city? And because that's going to be important in terms of what happens to particularly multifamily rents and office rents in downtown areas. And one thing we learned is we looked at the correlation between these migration patterns. and what it meant for multifamily and office rents. And sure enough, particularly for the multifamily rents, there is almost a perfect correlation between people moving in and out of these areas. In other words, net migration and what happens to rents. The good news is as things start to normalize, there may actually be a pent-up demand from Generation Z and maybe even some of the millennials that want to get back into the urban areas once they're comfortable and once they're feeling like they're going to be moving back into the office. And we do believe that a lot of people will go back to the office. Not everybody's going to be working from home. We actually believe the majority will go back to the office. And, you know, PricewaterhouseCoopers did a survey recently that showed that 95% of the CEOs feel like it's extremely important to have their people back in the office to make sure that their corporate culture continues. And believe it or not, a large majority of the individuals surveyed said they wanted to get back in the office because they wanted the camaraderie and they wanted to be in the office to be able to learn the things they need to learn from their peers. So for these reasons, I think you're going to see people moving back in eventually once things normalize. But make no mistake about it, these migration trends are important. They're important for real estate investors. They have a huge impact on the performance of their real estate. Thank you.